Today, we're going to talk about one of the most unbelievable stories in the entire history of spaceflight. I mean, it's a story where pretty much everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Twice, all in the first few seconds of a launch. We're talking about two major, catastrophic failures that should have absolutely destroyed the space shuttle. But somehow, by some wild miracle, they ended up saving the mission and everyone on board.
It sounds completely backward, right? How on earth can two separate disasters somehow combine to create a success? Well, that's exactly what went down on mission STS-93. And by the end of this, you are going to see how a tiny little pin and one worn-out wire led to what might just be the luckiest escape the shuttle program ever had.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. To really get why this story is so incredible, you first have to understand that this mission was dangerous from the very beginning. STS-93 was pushing the space shuttle to its absolute breaking point before it even cleared the tower.
So what was the big deal? Well, stuffed into the payload bay was the Chandra X-ray Observatory, and this thing was a monster. It was the single heaviest object the shuttle ever tried to carry into orbit. In fact, it was so heavy, it pushed the shuttle's total weight way over its official safety limit. So, just to get off the ground, NASA had to put the entire vehicle on a serious diet, literally shaving off tons of weight anywhere they possibly could.
So how'd they do it? It's not like you can just leave some fuel behind, right? Nope. They had to make some pretty significant changes to the whole setup. The crew was cut down to 5 astronauts instead of the usual 7. They used a specially designed lighter external fuel tank, and all 3 of the main engines were swapped out for lighter models. Every single gram mattered on this one.
And one of those lighter engines, number 2019, is absolutely central to our story. Now, this was a veteran engine. It had already flown 18 times, a real workhorse. But all that use had taken its toll. You see, over time, tiny little cracks had started to form in its liquid oxygen posts. These are the super small pipes that feed that ice-cold oxygen right into the combustion chamber. If even one of those failed during flight, well, the whole engine would just tear itself to pieces.
Now, instead of a really complex, time-consuming repair, NASA went with a standard procedure. They just popped these small metal pins into the tops of the cracked pipes to block them off. It was a common fix, saved a lot of time and money. But on this mission, one of these tiny little pins was about to become a very, very big problem.
And that brings us to the first catastrophe. The second the shuttle's engines roared to life, that simple, practical little fix set off a terrifying chain reaction.
So here's what happened. At ignition, one of those metal pins wiggled itself loose. It was instantly fired like a bullet into the engine's combustion chamber at over 30 meters per second. In less than a blink of an eye, it ricocheted off the chamber wall and slammed into the engine nozzle, puncturing 3 of the super delicate coolant tubes that line it. All of a sudden, highly flammable liquid hydrogen started gushing out of the side of the engine. And get this, if that tiny pin had damaged just 2 more of those coolant pipes, the entire engine nozzle would have melted down, destroying the shuttle and everyone on it. They were hanging by a thread and had no idea.
Incredibly, none of the shuttle's sensors could actually detect the hydrogen leak itself. All the onboard computers knew was that for some reason, the engine's internal pressure was lower than it should be, because, less hydrogen was actually making it to the combustion chamber.
So the computer's automated response was immediate. To fix what it saw as low pressure, it did the only thing it knew how to do. It started pumping more liquid oxygen into the engine to compensate. And yeah, that brought the pressure back up, but it created a whole new, invisible crisis. The shuttle was now burning through its oxygen way too fast. It was on a collision course to run out of O2 long before it could ever reach orbit.
As if a massive hydrogen leak wasn't enough drama for one day, just 5 seconds after liftoff, a completely separate, totally unrelated disaster struck. This time it was an electrical glitch.
And the cause was almost laughably simple. It was a ticking time bomb hidden deep inside the shuttle's wiring. A single electrical wire happened to run right next to a small screw that had been over-tightened, leaving a sharp edge. And over the course of many, many missions, the vibrations from launch had caused that wire to rub against that screw, slowly, flight by flight, wearing away its protective insulation. Well, 5 seconds into flight, STS-93, that insulation finally wore all the way through. The exposed wire arced onto the screw, and boom, a major short circuit. The cockpit lit up like a Christmas tree with false alarms, including a terrifying one about a fuel cell failure. But the real problem, the critical one for our story, was what that short did to the engine control system. It knocked 2 of the main engine computers completely offline.
So let's just pause for a second.
We've got two completely separate mission-ending emergencies happening at the exact same time. A fuel leak in one engine and a major computer failure affecting two others. This should have been the end. But this is where the story goes from a tragedy to an absolute miracle. This is where two disasters saved the day.
Now, to get what happens next, you need a quick lesson on how the shuttle's engine computers worked. See, each of the three main engines was controlled by two computers, a primary and a backup. Normally, they're both running at the same time, constantly checking each other's sensor readings and averaging all the data out. It's a fantastic safety feature, designed to make sure a single bad sensor on one computer can't cause a huge problem.
Well, for the center engine, that short circuit had one critical effect. It completely knocked the main computer offline, gone, which meant the backup computer was suddenly in sole command. There was no more averaging data, no more double-checking. The backup was now making all the calls, based only on what its sensors were telling it.
And here it is. Here is the 1 in a billion twist that saved everyone. As it turns out, that backup computer had a secret, a pre-existing, undiscovered flaw. One of its pressure sensors was faulty, and it was incorrectly reading the engine's pressure as being way higher than it actually was. Now, normally, this bad reading would have just been averaged out by the main computer and wouldn't have mattered. But now, it was the only voice the engine was listening to.
So do you see what's happening here? It's completely insane. On one side of the shuttle, you have the hydrogen leak tricking an engine into pumping more liquid oxygen, burning through fuel way too fast. And at the exact same time, on the other side, you have this faulty sensor tricking the center engine into pumping less liquid oxygen to try and lower its own falsely high pressure. One engine was guzzling oxygen while the other was conserving it. The two errors, by sheer dumb luck, perfectly canceled each other out.
You know, had either one of these failures not happened, the shuttle would have run out of oxygen and never made it to orbit. But because they both happened together in this incredibly specific and bizarre way, the mission was able to keep going, just flying on a razor's edge.
After 8.5 nail-biting minutes of flight, the shuttle finally reached orbit. And when they checked the numbers, its final velocity was off target by just 5 meters per second. That's it. That is how perfectly the two disasters had balanced each other out, an impossibly close call.
From there, it was actually pretty routine. The crew just used the shuttle's smaller orbital engines to make up that tiny speed difference. They successfully deployed the Chandra telescope, they completed their mission, and they came back safely to Earth, only finding out the true terrifying extent of their near disaster after they had landed.
It's a story that just defies belief. I mean, the space shuttle was built with incredible redundancies and safety systems. It's a true testament to brilliant engineering. But on this day, what ultimately saved the mission and its crew wasn't a planned safety feature. It was a glitch, a coincidence, a 1 in a billion shot. It really makes you wonder, in the incredibly dangerous business of space exploration, how much of it really comes down to human skill and how much of it is just pure dumb luck.